Okay, here we are. We've got a lot of news today, so I'm doing a part two of today's Here and Now. This is Dr. Abraheim Weisfeld speaking on behalf of the Jewish Socialist Bund, which has its website at that name, Jewish Socialist Bund with hyphens, .net. And the manifesto of the Jewish People's Liberation Organization, or the Jewish PLO, from 1988, actually, is available on the same website with the addition of slash JPLO to get to that document. Okay, now there's some news here that I have to bring to your attention that is located on my Facebook page, which is here now in the share. Where are you? Let me find you, Human Docs. Oh my, okay. Okay, let's start here. Here's the Facebook channel with all the previous videos, as you can see here. Not many viewers, on YouTube. Mostly our videos are viewed on TikTok, where we get about 100 views a week from the more serious people, the organizers, and the writers who are looking for ideas. Because what you get on the normal sort of, journalistic sort of social media is a repetition of the news that has been collected, but leaving the analysis, to the side as if it's not important. But it is. And now we go to, oh boy, this is complicated. Okay, now to get to the Facebook, we have to go here. Yeah, here it is. Okay, have a look at this, people. Live from the Times of Israel, which had this on the first article, front page of the ebook edition of the of their English language Israeli media. But this article disappeared after a few minutes. But I got a capture screen of hundreds of thousands of ultra-Orthodox men blocked the entrance to Jerusalem. Not just, one building in Jerusalem. All of Jerusalem was shut down, with hundreds of thousands of Orthodox who came to protest a mass anti-draft rally. Anti-draft means anti-conscription into the military. They refuse to go into the military because they're not Zionists. And even though, there's a stereotype made of, Orthodox Jewish people as being pro-Zionist or being pro-occupation and all that, it's not true. Look at that. Even living in Jerusalem, they consider themselves to be Palestinian rather than Israelis. And they refuse to go into the military. And even though 80,000 were called up to go into the military because Netanyahu wanted to wage war, with a bunch of new soldiers because the old ones, were too tired out, to show up for a recall of the reserves. And only about, half of the reserves, actually showed up. And these Orthodox don't even refuse to be conscripted into the military in the first place. 80,000, imagine 80,000 soldiers, what they could do. No way. They're going to resist the Zionist, military conscription, and they have here. And out of the 80,000 who were called up to be conscripted, only like 2,350 showed up actually for the military. What are they going to do? Arrest them all? There's not enough prisons, to put hundreds of thousands, of Orthodox into prison. And if they did, that would be the end of that, of the pretext, of Zionism to being a Jewish movement. No, they're being called up to fight on behalf of U.S. imperialism, and they know it. So they refuse to show up because they're Jewish, not Zionists. There's a big distinction to be made there. And people have yet to understand what the difference is. Even B'Tselem, the Israeli, human rights organization, refers to Zionism as Jewish supremacy, as if it speaks in the name of the Jewish people, which is false. And to use the term Jewish supremacy is in itself a anti-Jewish act, saying that, Zionism is acting on behalf of the Jewish people is false because one, a majority of the Jewish people, 55%, don't even live in that state. Two, they are acting on behalf of the Jewish Zionist militias, which became the IDF, the Israel Defense Force, so-called, otherwise known as the Imperial Death Force. And Zionism, it's just an interpretation of Christianity, which is called Judeo-Christianity. Even Netanyahu speaks to the evangelicals, Christians United for Israel or something like that, with Haggai. And as Netanyahu comes there and speaks to them and says, yeah, he's really, Judeo-Christian. He's not, actually Jewish. Zionism is just a form of Judeo-Christianity, which calls for the occupation of Jerusalem by the Crusader forces, which the Zionists have become, another mercenary Crusader force. And here's the actual Jewish people, Hasidim, Orthodox, who refuse the conscription from the Zionist military. Now, there's more. And this has to be featured, people have to be sent this, and shared because it's being suppressed. It was taken off, of the Times of Israel newspaper, completely removed. You can't even find that website anymore. There is no website address left for this. The only place where you can find this photo is here and now. So let's circulate that. Yeah, Venezuela is being supported by both Russia, China, and Iran. So no way is the USA going to take control of the oil reserves there in Venezuela, which are the biggest oil reserves in the world, actually. Okay, now here's Mandama. Zahar Mandama Quareme is his African middle name. And he is. He speaks the truth.
Soon after that, we moved to Cape Town, right after the fall of apartheid. And I always remember the words of Nelson Mandela, who was growing up, who said, "We know all too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians." Yeah. And then I moved to New York City, and I grew up in this city from the age of 7. And it struck me the contradiction that existed when it came to Palestine. The contradiction that existed when it came to all of these seemingly universal beliefs that we held about freedom, about liberty, about justice, about safety, and yet we drew a line in the sand when it came to Palestine. And so I'm going to date myself here a little bit, but my first reaction in high school was to argue with a friend of mine on his Facebook wall. We posts back and forth, and each time I thought I would convince him. And each time he thought the same. And I realized at that time that being right is meaningless. It is organizing that you actually have to do so that you can win. And so when I went to college, I founded my school's first Students for Justice in Palestine. Proud SJP alum. And then I came back to New York City, and after many years, I ran for the state assembly. And serving in Albany, I introduced legislation titled the Not on Our Dime Act. And what this legislation says is that it should be illegal for any New York State charity to fund Israeli war crimes. Very straightforward, Very simple. It's very keeping in the spirit of what charities should be doing. But what we found in New York State is that New York State registered charities have been sending more than $60 million a year, every year, for more than a decade, to Israeli settler organizations and to units of the Israeli military that are currently implicated in the genocide in Gaza. Yay! And I introduced that because it is yet another way that we have to end this contradiction. We would never allow this with any other country. Yet when it comes to Palestinians, we simply draw that line in the sand. And so I stand before you now as a candidate for mayor, running to defeat Eric Adams. Yeah! Who ran for mayor in 2021 promising that he wanted to retire in the Golan Heights. Yeah. Eric Adams, who had a Zoom call with billionaires and then sent the NYPD to Columbia and CUNY and NYU. Eric Adams, who has justified the killing of children over the course of this genocide. And I stand before you as a candidate who is running to represent all of those that Eric Adams has left behind. First and foremost, that is the working class of New York City. The people that Eric Adams has raised the rent on by 9%. The people that Eric Adams has supported Connide's $70 a month rate hike. The people that Eric Adams has put a $20,000 to $25,000 a year expense on their backs if they want to have children and have childcare for those children. And I also run with an explicit repudiation of everything that Eric Adams has said and done when it comes to Palestine and organizing for member representing Astoria and Long Island City, and I'm running to be the next mayor of New York City. So I was born and raised in Kampala, Uganda, in East Africa. Shout out to Uganda. And soon after that, we moved to Cape Town, right after the fall of apartheid. And I always remember Palestinian human rights. I stand as the only candidate in this race who has repeatedly attested to the fact that I will not send the NYPD into any encampment like what we saw at Columbia.
There. Now let's get back here. Okay, still recording. Good. Okay. Impressive, huh? You know, with somebody like that, the Democratic Socialists of America, he could lead a formation of a united front together with the Green Party, together with the Bernie Sanders, even AOC, if she'll see the way to a united front instead of, presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. So there it is. That's what was missing from the previous video, because there's so much is happening now that we needed to do the second part here in order to get that information out to you, especially the mass demonstration of hundreds of thousands of Orthodox in Jerusalem who refused to be conscripted into the Zionist military. It proves, there's a difference between Zionism and being Jewish. So there it is, all the proof necessary. Okay, bye for now.